This episode and others like it are made possible by the generous support of my patrons on Patreon. If you'd like to help me produce more content like this and get early access to every new video, consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/secondthought. After the recent social media crackdown on various far-right figures and groups, we saw conservatives calling for more state control of tech giants and liberals defending these companies' rights as private entities. This came as a bit of a shock to people from both camps, and less of a shock to people who realize just how similar the two groups are. While we may want to appreciate the irony of this turn of events, it does bring up the question of what the government's role is in society. Should the state be responsible for shutting down accounts seen as dangerous? Traditionally, the conservative worldview sees the state as a meddling entity against which they must protect themselves, and generally considers federal taxes or any form of regulation to be government overreach. Contrarily, liberals usually see the state as the only entity capable of standing up to corporate greed, protecting the citizen, and providing for the people. To an extent, both views have some merit, while at the same time both being clearly oversimplified. The fact that we're seeing the arguments of one camp now being upheld by the other clearly shows that neither view is entirely right or entirely honest, and what really matters to both sides is whatever best serves their interest. And that's precisely what the role of an effective state should be, to best serve its people. Government and democracy were, in theory, designed to serve society. The whole idea behind democracy is to allow for each and every person to have a say in how the country is run. And this is the key point. Politicians are, supposedly, elected to uphold those desires and defend the interest of their electorate. The entire debate of whether the state is an enemy of the people or its friend can be centered around the difference between its theoretical role and its behavior and practice. One thing to clarify before diving into this question is that the state is not a single uniform entity. There is no state with a will and mind of its own. What we're talking about when we say the state is a group of influential people on both sides of the supposed political divide who maneuver their way around ministerial offices one election after another, steering the nation in whatever direction best suits their interests. And herein lies the problem. These people do not serve the interest of the citizen, but that of their wealthy friends and those who keep them in power. Today, you would be hard-pressed to prove that the people who run the supposed democracies of the Western world have the best interest of their people at heart. If there is just one thing everyone, regardless of political opinion, can agree upon, it's that politicians lie. And they lie a lot. Depending on whether or not their lie is convenient to you, you may find it justifiable. But the fact that we accept so much lying in our politics as the way things are shows just how badly the system has failed the average citizen. I wish we could trust our governments and consider them reliable, but when they are run by known liars, crooks, and out-of-touch millionaires, there's no room for trust. There are many fundamental issues in society that we should be focusing on, from access to healthcare, food, and education to ensuring a decent standard of living to everyone. The role of the state, of our elected officials, is to tackle these issues. A state that serves the people is one that prioritizes their well-being with policies that aim to raise standards of living for all citizens. The American state today, whether helmed by a Republican or a Democrat, is little more than a corporate-controlled duopoly whose number one purpose is to turn a profit. Such a group of people will never implement policies that put citizen well-being above the dollar. First and foremost, they will implement policies that are acceptable to their financial backers. Today's state is run by individuals who fear they will lose their power and privilege if those who fund them go finance someone else. A state like this is the enemy of the people. The modern American state functions as a giant bribery operation, with no regard for human life, the exact opposite of its theoretical purpose. American politicians tend to scold and chastise developing countries when they display obvious corruption, such as officials taking money from petrochemical companies in exchange for drilling rights. But our politicians engage in the exact same thing. The oil lobby in the US is one of the most influential lobbies in the world. We have renamed bribery and made it acceptable by calling it lobbying. But the effect is no different. Climate change has been a known fact since the 80s. Exxon scientists were some of the first to discover it was happening, and it continues to threaten the very existence of our species today. Yet little to nothing has been done to tackle it, simply because the oil and gas lobbies sit at the table of every environmental meeting. Why? Because they can pay their way there. That is a bribe. In reality, the power of politicians, and therefore the state, is held by those who have the money to keep the people they want in power. Our system of politics not only allows this to happen, it incentivizes it. The lack of accountability for one's actions in politics also incentivizes elected officials to be all talk and no action. There are no consequences to a politician's lies. If anything, the past 4 years have shown us that all the credentials you need to be commander-in-chief of the most powerful nation in the world is the ability to keep lying without breaking a sweat. Donald Trump made big promises for American workers. He did not keep any of those that would have actually improved the lives of average Americans. A politician's promise is worth nothing to any of us because we know it means nothing. That is because there's no punishment associated with lying. Presidential debates are nothing more than feature-length team sports events where the candidates try to outbid each other with outlandish promises they will never keep. And yet we accept it as normal. The state to which we are beholden today is one that rewards every single one of its members hundreds of thousands and often millions of dollars in taxpayer money over their political career. That is despite the fact that nearly all influential politicians in the US have a net worth of several $million already. As a society, we finance, support, and incentivize a system that cares nothing at all for our interests while lining the pockets of its most glamorous members and key executives with obscene wealth. The office of President, Chancellor, or Prime Minister, if it needs to be held at all, should be occupied by those among us who are the most altruistic, those who have shown a willingness to devote their lives to making everyone's lives better, not to be filled with the worst humanity has to offer. Our acceptance of lies and the financial incentives linked to power are both key components in allowing this corrupt system to exist. The dismal behavior of our government and its many apparent failures to uphold the citizens' interests have led to an ingrained cynicism in how we think about the state, and this pushes many people to view it as the enemy. But the state itself is not necessarily our enemy. Power-hungry politicians with no morals are the enemy. A system that allows and perpetuates corruption at the highest level is our enemy. New policies holding politicians to account for their words and actions, as well as removing the incentive of personal gain, could be the answer to many of the crises we see today, and are an essential step for the state to redeem itself in the eyes of the people. That being said, the end goal, one that is shared by a growing number of Americans both on the left and the right, is the withering away of the state entirely. Whether this happens gradually or cataclysmically, there is a growing consensus that perhaps we don't need this institution at all. But in the meantime, there are ways to improve the system under which we all operate. There are options for creating a state that represents the interest of the people. A state that we can at least mostly trust and is no longer our enemy. The first step is to align political action and policies with societal interest. Then, dismantle special interest groups, destroy the power of lobbies, and subject the system to maximum transparency. Finally, we would need to remove the financial incentive of politics. We already know how to measure societal well-being, what metrics to focus on, and how to improve people's lives. It isn't rocket science. We can start with something simple, like the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, a series of acknowledgments so fundamental, so basic, that no decent person would try to denigrate its validity, though an update to make the language less Western-centric would be worthwhile. There are 30 articles in the Universal Declaration. The American government is in violation of 12 of these fundamental human rights. There are certain moral and inalienable necessities and obligations that all humans have to each other. The supposed role of the state is to make sure these are respected, not to partake in their abuse. Another place to look for examples to follow is the World Happiness Report. In this report, you can find all the best performing countries in terms of their citizens' happiness. It isn't hard to identify the commonalities, and they aren't surprising either. What all these countries have in common are governments implementing legislation that makes the average citizen's life better, not those that make the corporate wallet deeper. Coming just short of the top 10 in 11th place is our next-door neighbor, Canada. Maybe we have some lessons to learn from them. But what exactly do these happiest countries in the world have in common? They all implement various forms of social policies that benefit their citizens rather than their corporations. Healthcare is free in all of them, and the average life expectancy of these countries is 6 years higher than the US. These states guarantee the people's right to medical treatment, rather than lining the pockets of the pharmaceutical and insurance companies that don't pay their taxes. Funding priorities in these happiest countries are also vastly different from US priorities. One of America's favorite things to spend money on is death. The US is the leading exporter of killing machines internationally, mostly paid for by the taxpayer who benefits nothing from this gruesome industry. Many of these countries spend a tiny fraction of their GDP on the military, while the US accounts for 38% of the entire world's spending on weapons. To put that into perspective, in 2020, these countries combined spent $64.25 billion on their militaries. The US spent $600 billion. So, where do they allocate their money instead? On issues that actually matter to the average citizen. 8 out of these 11 countries offer completely free education, including university, with the remaining 3 offering generous amounts of financial aid. Not only is their education free, but its quality is miles ahead of anything we could dream of here in the US. The simple, obvious truth is that the people running the state have no interest in improving our lives, but a whole lot of interest in lucrative business opportunities. Of course, refocusing state priorities to benefit society is only one step towards a state that works the way it's meant to. The other is to strip politicians of financial incentives and impose total transparency on all the financial dealings that involve elected officials. The average American is bound by law to reveal all their financial information to the state, but in return, those who make up the state have no legal obligation to do the same. Forcing politicians to reveal their tax returns and declare every single donation they receive, both direct and indirect, would add transparency to the system and allow society to better understand where the state's allegiance truly lies. This, in turn, would block special interest groups and lobbies from bribing state representatives, as we would be able to sanction all politicians who received money attached to the interest of unelected groups. Going further, those people who obtain power in the US, whether Mitch McConnell or Nancy Pelosi, are already worth millions of dollars in their own right. Yet society pays them all hundreds of thousands of dollars more to sit in those chairs and take more bribes to promote terrible policies. The president already lives rent-free in one of the most expensive houses in the world, and usually owns many a trust fund that secured his future long before he came into office. If their claims are to be believed, these people pursued a career in politics to improve society, because they supposedly believe in making the country a better place for everyone, not for a paycheck and the power to increase their wealth and influence. Most of these people are already very wealthy. They do not need the ridiculous benefits they receive, and quite frankly, they don't deserve them either. It is important that we guarantee a reasonable standard of living to our leaders, as we should for everyone, so that they can focus on the job. But it is ridiculous that we allow them to live like kings and incentivize the greedy to pursue political careers. Placing all these politicians on the median American wage would significantly reduce their interest in the position, and might just help in giving the real altruists, those who actually care about making life better for the rest of us, a shot at a job they would perform admirably. So, the answer to our question is yes. The modern state is the enemy of the people. But not because state power is inherently wrong, though a consensus does seem to be heading that direction, but because the state is a collection of greedy, power-hungry individuals who have no interest in improving society and don't need to have any because we accept things the way they are and expect nothing better. This entire system of governance is broken, and it needs to change if we truly want a just and fair society. Whether the people decide the state will be a part of that society depends on how quickly those in power get their act together. I mentioned at the beginning of this video that this kind of content is supported by my patrons on Patreon. This kind of video, while very important, is something that sponsors won't touch. To keep my channel running, I rely on sponsors, AdSense revenue, and donations from generous viewers. By producing content like this, I lose out on both sponsors and AdSense. If you enjoy the kind of videos I'm producing and you're able to chip in even $1 a month, I would greatly appreciate the support. You can find my Patreon page, join our Discord server, and get early access to every video at patreon.com/secondthought. If you enjoyed this video, consider dropping a like. If you hated it, a thumbs down. You can check out my previous episodes by clicking the links on your screen. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.